Welcome, everybody, back to another Microsoft Unboxed Pod. This is episode 92. I'm your host today, Kareem Anderson, and I'm joined by.
David Allen, hope everybody is doing well out there. I hope everybody that celebrated Easter had a good Easter last week. We're glad to be back with a little bit of tech news, a little bit of a short week because a lot of people get Monday off after Easter. So we got a few things for you. So sit back, relax, be cranky with us, laugh because we're probably going to laugh at ourselves at some point during this. It just seems to be the kind of day we're having. And we'll get you some tech news and get you started with your weekend.
Yeah, as my partner would say, it's been pretty light on the news front, especially in lieu of Microsoft's push towards AI. Because normally, for those of you who have been following Microsoft news, maybe not necessarily this pod, because this pod started after the AI bubble, we used to get hardware stuff. There would always be a flurry of news, a speculation about Surface hardware or new hardware coming out or a Surface phone or accessories. Microsoft did most of that about 3 years ago. So now we have nothing in between now and build, essentially. Back in the day, we used to get news about Windows updates, and what might be coming out of Windows work. AI kind of pushed all of that to the side and said, hey, I'm Copilot, I'm here, and I'm going to take up most of the limelight. And now that we're starting to see signs of AI wavering, we're starting to have a big void, not only a void in development for AI, but a void in news about AI too. So, in lieu of that, we will talk about PC hardware sales having a bump, small bump, but a bump, according to the latest IDC reports. We'll be talking about Microsoft also bringing back its Windows Insider in-person meetups. So this could be a sign of things to come. We've been hearing a lot of rhetoric about how Microsoft wants to refocus on Windows. Then we'll be talking about Copilot and Microsoft perhaps realizing that branding 80 plus services with Copilot may have been a little Copilot overuse. So we'll see where that leads to. And maybe it's, again, part of the refocus on making it a utility versus making it a super, marketed feature. Then we'll get into free play days. So again, we'll hopefully get you in and out quickly. But as usual, we always start off with our weekly rant. And I believe my buddy David here has one for the ages. I'm going to let him
Yeah,
take it.
folks. Yes. I'm going to condense this as much as possible and try to control my internal anger and not make it come out here on camera. But this directly involves Microsoft and Microsoft products. I think this is a good rant for the pod here. Quick version, my partner and I, my buddy, we use Microsoft 365 for our communications, our email, and Copilot and all that good stuff. So I have all those apps on my Android device. I use an Android device, not the iDevice, to try to, get a good feel for all the good Microsoft integrations, etc. And I use those things. And last Friday, we had Easter holiday. We didn't have a pod, and you and I both took the day off, sorta. We didn't really, talk much on Friday, and a lot of people take Monday off, and my teams and everything worked well Monday. I had no updates for those that are going to send me that email and ask me. I had no updates. When I woke up Tuesday morning, Teams did not sign in. You got to the sign in screen and it just sat there and would spin. Everybody knows what the Windows spinner looks like. It would just sit there and spin. Didn't think much of it. Did the old for the advanced Android users, went to the app settings, did the clear cache, did the delete memory, still spinning. Uninstalled the app, reinstalled the app, still spinning. Got a second device, tried that, still spinning. So everybody says, you start digging into it a little bit and Reddit and all the Microsoft tech community, check your security certificates, check this setting, check that setting, and make sure you check your Microsoft 365 admin dashboard with your administrator. Well, for us, I'm the administrator, so I knew those hadn't changed. And we didn't use Teams very much on mobile for Wednesday, well, Tuesday and most of Wednesday, and I started noticing Wednesday night, my Outlook stopped working. My Microsoft Authenticator stopped working. Okay, now I have a problem because I need those 2 items to work. We can work around Teams on mobile not working, but I need my email on my phone and I need my authenticator to sign into things. So I started digging a little deeper and everybody says, "Oh, it's an Android web view update. You got to get rid of that update, everything will work." Okay, I ask AI, our lovely co-pilot, where to find the web view updates. I find those. On my device, they are in a list, chronological order, so I think. There's no way to let me know they're in chronological order. They're just listed. There's no version numbers, no dates of when they were installed, no nothing. So everybody says you've got to uninstall the latest Android WebView updates. I'm like, well, we're going to play whack an update here because we don't know if the first one is the latest, the third one is the latest, or the last. I uninstalled the top Android WebView update, and voila, I have my Teams back. I have my Outlook back. Everything seems to work. Now, my question is this. Eventually, that Android WebView update will come back. So whoever controls that, they want me to have that update. I'm assuming that's an Android thing. But in 2026, why are we having issues like this? In digging up, and I spent hours on this, and as you know, you and I know how to dig up things very well, and we know how to read and research and ask AI this and that. And I spent hours resetting security certificates, resetting app settings, resetting this in Android, that in Android, this in Teams, that in Teams. I was literally about 30 seconds away from wiping my device so I could get up yesterday. I had something I had to do yesterday that was going to require me to be out for a little while. I needed access to my things by yesterday morning. So I'm sitting here Wednesday night going, I'm about 30 seconds away from wiping this device and starting over. Going to be a long night. And then I find Android WebView updates kind of as a last ditch search. Why did these things happen in 2020? Why has I'm clearly not the only one experiencing this because once I figured out it was an Android update, Android WebView update, I looked last night from that direction. There's dozens of posts about this once you find out it's an Android WebView update. But how many regular users out there that are not techie that just expect their app to work, have gone through this issue, have bought new devices, maybe even sales lost for Samsung, Google Pixel, maybe some sales lost for Teams because somebody somewhere, their office got up and 5 or 6 of their employees didn't work that day. Well, Teams is messed up. They're not going to fix it. So we're going to Google Workspace. You know, there's the bigger picture there. I'm thankful that I was able to fix it and had enough knowledge on how to fix it. But there are a lot of people and a lot of companies out there that if these things are quote unquote broke, they don't try to fix it. They just expect it to work. So this shouldn't be happening in 2026. And things like we talk about vibe coding, where people are using AI to code apps. This is real coding, I hope. We can do better than this and we should be better than this.
Well, I got no answers for you, buddy, but I will keep my rant short in case people might have answers in the comments below or want to get to you. But this is about compression algorithms. I am
I might like this. What do you got?
upset that we are focusing all this data resources and data center being built for AI, which everyone thinks it's currently taking people's jobs and it's going to change everything. You know what will fundamentally change things is if we could figure out a compression algorithm that allows us to share videos or photos large size across any platform almost rather, I wouldn't say instantaneously, but with a little bit of downloading Wi-Fi. I'm getting sick and tired of being my daughter had a project. We created a little video that she needed for school about a cooking experiment that she did. And I shortened the video down. I took tons of photos and video of the whole process. Altogether, I think the video would have been about 15, 20 minutes. I shortened it down to a 1 minute video, and I think it was like 130 megabytes, and couldn't be sent obviously over text. It could barely be sent through any traditional email method because it was too large of a file size to share. And then you had to jump through hoops to share through Google Photos, to then have a link. You had to use some third party platform in order to send it. I'm like, why are we having to jump through hoops when we have all of this, processing power being centered towards AI and sucking up water and poisoning the earth and overheating things for AI, so we could type in prompts and we could be figuring out a compression algorithm that allows us to send stuff, to send, again, shared images, shared video across platforms, across ecosystems. Like there should be, I think, what was the show? Silicon Valley, which was an HBO mockumentary kind of, it wasn't mockumentary, but it was
Mhm.
like a show that was poking fun at. And I think Judge, the guy who does it, did a great job and, kind of finding these little areas to poke at in the pop culture slash, socioculture phenomena of this world. That was the whole thing. That was their whole thing, was creating this compression algorithm that would be revolutionary. And while it was fun to mock, I feel like it's something that we should really get into. Anyway, that's my rant. We need to jump off the AI train for just a minute, take a side detour, an excursion, as some people like to use the term these days, and focus that effort on a compression algorithm that actually gets us to send large files across platforms, and to be able to download these things onto our devices and take up less space. So that's my rant. Compression algorithms over AI.
I could not agree more with that because what I have found, I have ran into that issue as well. And everybody screams, "Oh, you need a NAS. You need a NAS." I get it. I have a NAS. I use it for that. I right click the file, I click share, and it downloads, straight from my network. Wonderful. Fantastic. But to your point, not everybody has a NAS. Not everybody wants a NAS. Not everybody has a budget for a NAS. Not everybody has the technical ability to set a NAS up. If you want people to use I'm going to have my second here. If you want people to use these public cloud services and pay for these public cloud services, then you should have a way to do basic things. We talk about content creators all the time. Their files are getting bigger. We should be accommodating as the files get bigger. Okay, I'll stop.
All right. For those of you who agree with us, put it in the comments below. Reach out to us on the website. Follow us on social media, and we can continue this conversation. But let's get into the news because that's why you guys are here. So if you fast forwarded 14 minutes, you are right where you need to be. First story. We have IDC coming out with a report about PC sales surprisingly getting a bump. We were thinking like, hey, everything's doom and gloom. Not necessarily the case. I'll let you run with that one.
Well, you wrote this up, but I wanted to open the I'm not gonna sit here and just read people numbers. When you said I read your headline, "The PC market is growing again, but the real story is what comes next." Excuse me. According to this IDC report, PC shipments grew 2.5% year over year, reaching 65.6 million units. As you said, that's not a blockbuster quarter, but it's the second consecutive of positive growth, and it arrives in the middle of a deteriorating economic conditions. We all know the price of RAM. So, as you said, the tone of the report was cautious, not necessarily something to celebrate. The firm describes 2026 as a volatile year defined by supply chain stress, shifting market share, and a widening gap between vendors who secured component access early. Now, I'm going to stop right there and kind of comment here and give you a chance to comment. It surprised me when you wrote this that this report existed and that PC sales were up. But as we know, we keep track of technology and everything going on with technology. There's always a reason why. And people like Dell, Lenovo, the bigger OEMs, they're able to buy products in stockpile. So maybe they were able to buy these products, RAM, CPUs, motherboards, hard drives, SSDs, etc. Maybe they were able to get up a large stockpile before we had all these wars and tariffs and all these things going on. So they're not having to increase pricing at the level of some other folks. Or are we at the point where people are panicking a little bit? Businesses are panicking a little bit. Things are going to get really bad, and we're kind of in a panic buying phase, and that has upped our numbers artificially.
Yeah, I think I know you didn't want to get into numbers, but I will give our listeners a little context with numbers. It grew 2.5% year over year, so again, not a huge number, but it does equal about 65.6 million units being sold year over year, and that's a lot of the growth isn't organic. It isn't like people are just like, all right, I'm at the end of my computer cycle, and it's time to just naturally get into a new PC, and it happens to be a higher end one that costs a little bit more, or maybe it's maybe I'm finding cheaper options, and we're getting more in bulk. No, what IDC is kind of attributing this quarter's growth is channel partners are pulling orders forward in expectation of a rising component price. And again, we talked about RAM being one of the major ones, but you're going to have a bunch of other things as far as cooling systems, and everyone's focused on materials as well. And then getting those materials in and out of these economic headwinds when it comes to tariffs, when it comes to manufacturing, where they're being manufactured, and things like that. And then there's the ongoing Windows 10 migration cycle. There will be some drop off here when people are saying, I'm just going to stay in devices and maybe move to Linux. Again, year for Linux, everyone keeps saying, or maybe move to Mac OS, maybe stick with a Chromebook. But, Windows 10 does kind of artificially push things when when Windows upgrades or forces everyone off of a particular version of its operating system. So those two things, OEMs front loading, saying, the same thing we did with tariffs. So like, I know it's coming, so let me buy a bunch so that I can keep my prices relatively competitive. And Windows is saying, hey, these devices no longer will be compatible with our old operating system. So you have to buy a new one. Well, all that to say is it's, again, not organic, which means they won't last. And the IDC believes even after this particular quarter, the rest of 2026 is going to be a decline. Uh, Prices will continue to rise, which will then, kind of create a revolving cycle. When you have rising prices, people don't upgrade as often. And
Right.
if people aren't upgrading, then you have to raise prices because you're not getting that continuous revenue line of either stagnant or going up. If people are not upgrading, that line starts to go down. And in order to compensate for that, when you have to tell investors, hey, what did you do this quarter? It's like, well, we didn't sell as many, but the few that we did sell, we sold for a higher price. So, and you're going to keep, doing this like, seesaw thing when it comes to customers, pricing, and availability. With that being said, I'm going to throw a little smoke bomb into this whole conversation with Apple being able to sell its devices, especially the
Yes.
MacBook Neo, for a pretty competitive price, and OEMs not going to be able to really compete with that in the coming months. As of right now, they're either obviously there are reasons why people pick Windows. The company uses Windows apps specific to Windows, 20-year legacy apps, things like that. You have to use Windows. Granted, for everyone who doesn't have to use Windows, people that have moved to the web platforms or specialized, mobile app development is, on on a tablet or something device, and you just use the computer as a supplemental. Being able to have a really good device for $600, solid, meaning no issues with the trackpad, no flex, no bloatware, no, having to do driver updates constantly. All that stuff becomes appealing. And since Apple made a ton of these A19 chips because they do it for the phones, it's going to be interesting to see Microsoft and its OEM partners try and compete with that, even though they may have it on the RAM's end of it. Again, it's all fleshes out when you say, hey, I can provide you 16 gigabytes of RAM or 13 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of RAM, but it takes a minimum of 16 gigabytes just to run Windows. And it takes 8 gigabytes to run Mac OS. You're still at the same baseline. It sounds like a bigger number, but in reality, it's not all that different. And, uh, and then, everyone has their issues with Windows for various reasons. You put that on top of that, you start macOS on this device starts to look a little more appealing. That's my kind of side quest thing about this whole thing.
You know,
I think the market's gonna become very difficult.
I saw something this week that there wasn't enough on it to report on, so we'll see if it builds up steam. That the MacBook Neo, I'm glad you brought that up, the $599 MacBook that Apple is selling, and it's been out a month now, give or take. We don't have any hard sales numbers on it. We don't report on those because we're mainly a Microsoft-based site, but I keep seeing positive reviews for that device. Give Apple its due. I keep seeing that it's flying off the shelves. I've seen that in several outlets that do report on, Apple, and I've also seen the rumor that it's doing well enough that there's a version in the works with more RAM. I have seen that rumor in two credible places, that are legit news outlets that are usually correct about what they post. So, to your point, people are going to get what they need, and Apple may be the one that is sitting pretty to say, yes, we have all of these mobile chips that we can put in your PC. The RAM is already on the chip. We don't have to worry about everything everybody else is going through if you don't mind a $500 device.
Right, and I mean, then the last part of this, and move on to the next story, the only other company I can see that can compete with this when it comes to, hardware, software, potentially pricing would be Microsoft, and I say this because they have the Surface Laptop Go, and they have Snapdragon chips, even older ones, and I'm talking about, like, if you put last year's Elite in there, or it's even and the Plus has a little bit degraded performance, but you make up for that with all of the benefit of the Surface hardware, with trackpads and keyboard and all that other stuff. If Microsoft decides to, and again, we'll see if they pivot in this hardware, now that the Neo's out, or maybe they had plans to before, putting one of those Snapdragon chips in there and dropping that price, I think it starts at like $800 or something like that. You drop it down to around $600, maybe you're $100 or $50, 50 to $100 more than the MacBook Neo or whatever that is, but you're offering full Windows, at least Windows. And again, and everyone's been doing a ton of development for Snapdragon PCs, and that translation layer is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. I think, most X Elite chips can convert most of the apps that you need and has great battery life. That's your Neo competitor right there. I know other companies can put out a $700 to $800 laptop, but then, they also need to make money on least licensing Windows, getting the chipsets from Intel, AMD, or whoever else is providing it. Microsoft is in a unique position to own Windows, create the Surface, and that the only thing they have to pay for is the chip. So
Remember, they've also got what was that the Surface Pro X that was Snapdragon driven. And I've got a different tablet by a different name brand to my left that runs the same chip. And since we've
well, I
had
mean, they
all
have the
this,
Surface Pro 11, which runs the Snapdragon.
okay, I went back a step further even before we got to
Right. I'm just saying, like, yeah.
you went to the original Snapdragon. I went back one further. That they've even got those chips laying around, and even with Windows improvements, those chips are viable for basic everyday productivity. So to your point, Microsoft's got two choices there. They can go back to some of those CX, I believe they were, that was in the Surface Pro X, and then the original, as you brought up, the original Surface Pro with the Plus chip.
I would say the Plus chip because it provides pretty good performance, and it does. I'd say, I mean, the A8CX was a custom chip that was still lacking as far as performance is concerned. I think these new Plus chips, and these are again, Plus are the lower tier versions of the Snapdragon X chips. The Elite's the higher one. If they can figure out a way to price the old X Elite, not the X2, but put some of those old X Elites in there if they have a bunch, and you'll get pretty good performance at a relatively good price on a really nice piece of hardware. that could compete with, I think the Go. Nevertheless, we're not paid to give Microsoft advice, so we're gonna stop until they start
We're
paying us.
not a Microsoft consultant, sorry.
No. So you guys figure it out on your own. We're just saying, as fans of Windows, give us the options. Our next story actually is about Windows. We have some Windows Insider meetups, and they are back.
I'm glad to
Again,
hear
for
this
those of
one.
you, yeah, this pod is relatively new, but David and I have been on the beat of Microsoft for a long time. If you followed us, you know that we are huge fans of Windows Insiders. I was a fan of being in the Windows Insider program during Windows 8 development. It seemed super secretive just because that's the way they wanted to develop in the shadows with these new, Metro UI development kits. And, we were going to do at first everything, and it was super fun. It failed. I would say miserably, but it failed pretty badly. But then Windows 10 revamped the Insider program and made it very personal, personable and personal. We got communications mostly this back before Twitter was a hellscape, but on Twitter. And there were several individuals that you could go to in between the build releases that would communicate upcoming things to expect or to address feedback. And it was really cool. We had Gabe all we had Donna Sakar, I believe her name was. We had LeBlanc was one of them. Jen Gentleman was another person. Like these are people that you could go to that were relatively trusted authorities in the transparency space when it came to Windows Insiders. We had Swag, which was another thing that was pretty fun. And we had these meetups. So Microsoft has decided to bring them back. They started with, I think they hosted one recently. Where was it at? Make sure I get it right. They had a secret, in Seattle recently, and they're planning to do a tour essentially, with the other remaining places being April 21st in New York City in the US, May 7th in Hyderabad in India, May 13th in Taipei, Taiwan, June 4th, San Francisco in the US, and then June 23rd in London, UK. I wish that they would have even more in between those, but this is just, getting our feet wet again in the insider program. And again, we didn't talk enough about it last week, but there were some stories about it, about how Microsoft is trying to refocus Windows. What are your thoughts about the insider program coming back and in-person meetups?
I think this is cool. I think this is something industry needs. I think this is something fans need. I think this is a good way for people to communicate and get excited about Windows again because Windows is kind of, AI is our reasoning and a few other things even before AI. AI is, the main reason. Windows insiders are where we can share ideas, and Microsoft has some people there at these meetups that are willing to listen and equally share back. I think this is awesome. It gets people talking. When you get people talking, the word spreads. You give people a t-shirt to your point of swag. You give people a hat. You give people a lanyard. You give them an ink pen. When they leave, they're talking. Look what I got from Microsoft today. This is what we talked about. Well, cool. I'll go to the next one. Let me go and join the insider program. Okay, so this is just cool. I could go on about it, but there's not a need. But at least let's get one on the East Coast, so maybe you and I could attend. The ones that are on schedule or West Coast or out of the country. And I get it, we got to get our feet
We
wet.
have
But
we have the New York one in 2 weeks,
okay,
April 20th.
maybe we need to pull one a little further south.
That'd be nice. Yeah, put one in Florida, put one in North Carolina somewhere. Or like I said, maybe again, this is just going into the summer. Perhaps we speed up and have more of these. Even if you guys can't or don't want to afford places for in person, you do own teams. You can do a mass
Yes,
digital meetup where you have people all using your platform, dog fooding this, seeing how far you can push the limits of how many people can be participating and organizing and doing a virtual kind of a meetup. And if you want to have those in between these in-person ones, the in-person ones are still, again, very necessary now that we're getting past our fear of each other thanks to COVID. But I think, being able to see the people behind Windows, because again, we don't have a face for Windows right now.
no,
And even on the Apple side, they always have Federighi out there. He's the face. He's who you talk to. That's what we point to. I know that there are executives that have been promoted and moved around and shuffled and musical chaired, to be on top of Windows, but they're not out here talking about it. They're not out here evangelizing it. And if you don't want them out there doing it, then have the people who get the swag, who play with Windows, who are still using it, be your evangelist, who are tied to the platform that you provide, maybe rationally or irrationally, going out there doing the footwork for you, creating stuff on TikTok themselves organically. I'm not saying you need to pay them, but these are people who are like, hey, I'm in the insider program. To your point, I just got this sticker. I think it's super cool. I wanted to show everybody. That is free marketing on social media to a younger crowd. You're losing that crowd, and because no one's interested. Everyone just sees Copilot, and now you're associated with Microsoft. That's not where you want to be at, and you don't have defenders. That's the other part. You might have come out and said that, and if you did that in Windows 10 during the heyday of insider programs, you would have an army of insiders saying, "Hey, they're not Microsoft. I love Windows, and this is why." Now you might have one or two people that are like, "I use Windows, but I can see the appeal of Apple." Otherwise, it's mostly just, "Hey, I can get along with the Chromebook. Apple's been doing this for me for a while. I just I just switched from a Windows PC to a MacBook, and it's so refreshing." Like, there's tons of those stories. So, Microsoft, here's how to stop the bleeding. More of these meetups, more discussions about Windows, please. And to that
Pound the
point, here's our
pavement, folks, pound the pavement.
thank you. And to that point, here's our next and last story, which is the Copilot Everywhere era may be coming to an end, but it did bring upon a slow creep of apathy. That was something I wrote. I was writing about a story that I believe our buddy Kevin over at Windows Central kind of first started talking about. And I was reiterating the point, and then I started to editorialize a little bit. But, here are some actual facts, though. There's every so often people go out and kind of count the number of programs, services, software that's branded Copilot. And I think, I forget the name of the individual who did this in particular, but it was somebody recently who counted about 80 products of Microsoft's portfolio that have been branded with Copilot. It's
Big number.
aggressive. It's aggressive. It's unnecessary. It's gratuitous. Uh, we went from Office 365 to Microsoft Copilot 365. We have Copilot itself. We have Copilot in the side panel on Edge. We got Copilot we had it in Notepad. They took the branding off. The AI is still there. We have Copilot in Paint. Like, it's just everywhere. And partly because, the Copilot team within Microsoft got the boost. They were the golden child that Satya Nadella wanted. And so they got to go around dictating where their name got put on in which services and products. Because again, Microsoft is a big company with tons of businesses, their own businesses of their own right. But Copilot was, again, the golden child. So it went in and kicked down the door and said, "Hey, you're putting Copilot on that." And they're like, "Well, you know, we just do Teams. We'll put Copilot in there. You Windows team, shut up. We're putting Copilot on you too." And so, yeah, I think now, though, I think we're moving towards area of Microsoft pulling back on that. And again, evident by the Notepad update. I don't know if you read about that or saw that recently, but insiders
Saw
are
it
getting a
yesterday.
Notepad. Yeah, they're getting a Notepad update that no longer has Copilot in there, at least not visibly located anywhere, no buttons for it or any of that. If you go into settings and features, you still have AI features, but they aren't the sale anymore. They are just tools now that you can go and be delighted with if you want to use them, as opposed to what we had previously, where it was like, here is your Notepad with AI, and you're going to be forced to use it. What are your thoughts on Microsoft at least somewhat pulling back on the Copilot chain? Is this indicative of AI in general, or is this just the company realizing, hey, we might have oversold Copilot?
I'm gonna add a little bit to your editorial here. I think this is a great thing to talk about. For those that watched, I don't know if you saw it over the last few weeks or not, but those that watched the NCAA tournament over the 2 or 3 weeks that was live and on television, did you see the Gemini and Copilot commercials? There were a lot of those, and you could see where Microsoft and Google had spent good money to try to make some of these AI services look more usable to the general public. I thought they were pretty good. They were showing people how to set schedules, how to cook food, how to get recipes, yada, yada. But to your story, I think this is a sign of things to come. The term micro slop has just enough growth to it, I think, to where we're going to see some pullback. We're going to see some pullback. We're going to see some retooling of, okay, they're calling it slop. It is or it isn't is not up for discussion. So what we're going to do is pull it back, make it a little less obvious, and those that know about it will find it and use it. Which
Yeah.
that may be the strategy, but that is also feeding into our other stories on the pod and our other stories in the past, the AI bubble. Because when people open apps, guess what? Most people have a routine. I do. I open my Outlook, I have a routine. I open my Word, I have a routine. I open my Gmail, I have a routine. They're not going to go digging for Copilot. So if it's a darned if you do and a darned if you don't. But if you're on the back end of Microsoft Stats watching what people are using, you're going to see real quick who misses Copilot because they can't find it.
Well,
Or
that was to your point though. That was, I think, part of the lazy marketing from these some of these teams. Now, I'm not saying there were arguments that Copilot was forced upon a lot of these teams, perhaps the Windows team, because they didn't really need Copilot to sell their product. But even other things like Office, something like that, they might have saw this as a lazy way to market because AI and Copilot are the new thing. And instead of saying, "Hey, we've built this new feature in Office and we have to explain to you what it is and how you can use it," we can just say Copilot. People are like, "Oh, what? You said AI and Copilot? I've heard that before. What does this Copilot do in Office 365?" It was easy for them to do versus saying, "Hey, you know what? You guys have been requesting machine learning for this particular thing. Here's the new way to do that." And people are like, "Well, that's boring. Like, I don't know. Is it new? I can't tell if you've improved it or whatever." As opposed to doing that, they just said Copilot here, Copilot there, Copilot everywhere. And people were just kind of chasing after like, "Oh, it's a new AI thing. It's a new AI thing." Then they use it and realize, "Oh, it's only slightly faster than what I was doing before. And now you're charging me more for it because you called it something different." Maybe now that they can pull back on the Copilot thing and say, "Hey, we've riddled your app with a ton of new features. That's why we charge you more for it. Not because it's AI, just because you have new features now." And people might be more accepting of it. Like, okay, well, yeah, I guess I might want to use this if I need to, if I'm getting charged for it. But if you tell me it's AI and that it's gonna, write up the whole report for me without me having to do anything, as opposed to offer you more suggestions, more refined suggestions, better suggestions than what it was doing before. Like I was just doing our PowerPoint presentations. And it's saying, "Hey, your PowerPoint designer is now powered by Copilot." And I'm like, these designs aren't any better than the ones I had when it wasn't powered by, by Copilot. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm glad that they offer suggestions for designs for the slides. Helps make these slides that we put together pretty quickly easy to do. But these things aren't revolutionary. And even if you type in what you want in a design, it's not any better than I'm arguing personally, anecdotally, than what it was before. It's a couple basic placements of the content that's in your app with a few things behind or overlays around the sides. It's not revolutionary, but you're telling me Copilot's now in it, and I'm expecting revolutionary now as opposed to, "Hey, we've improved suggestions." But that's my
feature
own personal rant.
the word feature versus service makes a difference to people. If it is a feature, you can kind of get away with it is what it is. Usually you don't. If it's a service, most people, like, they have an expectation level and they expect a cost. And if you don't meet either one of those, they're not interested. So maybe we go from Copilot, Copilot Pro to a service. But the negative side of that is going to be, what are they going to do? I know exactly what they're going to do. That Microsoft Office price is going to go up for everybody. And everybody is going to pay for the people using those features. So
Well, see,
that's the
that's what I'm also
downside.
wondering too. For the impending AI bubble, when it does burst, if everything's labeled AI and Copilot and it's cost us jobs, opportunities, resources, land and development everywhere, people are going to have a really bad connotation. And when they see that, they're going to be opposed to it. Again,
Right.
AI may go over the bubble. It may actually succeed, and maybe people will want it. But I think in the short to near term, people are already associating AI with faulty, expensive, unnecessary. And they're also
Yeah.
associating Copilot with AI. And when it's on everything that they see, everything that they open, every service that they open, every time it gives you a prompt to try and use it, and you have those three negatives in front of you already before you even start using the product, it makes people not want to use your product or use it even less. And so maybe that's where they're pulling back on the branding and saying, hey, the features are there. They're in the app somewhere. You go find them and use them. And then you tell people why you like using them.
I want to say one more thing, and I promise I'll put a button on this. The reason I chuckled when you said that was, the people's opinion. I enjoy reading. Notice my word usage here. I enjoy reading a lot of things. I read a lot of social media. I listen to a lot of podcasts. And here we're having a battle over land and resources, even before in some of the major cities, even before AI become a thing, this battle was brewing that certain people want certain land in certain areas used for private, public, etc. Well, we've been having a public battle with the power company because one of the power companies here wants to continue to increase people's bills. So what do you see on social media? No data centers. We're not paying for the data centers. No, no, no. So what do? I bring reality to the conversation very quickly. Okay, let's go close down the Facebook. Let's go close down the TikTok. Let's go close down the YouTube. Let's go close down Snapchat, WeChat. You get the picture. If we're going to be mad at data centers, you know, let's close them all down.
Well, to that argument, though, I will say people get, even if it's just doom scrolling and the, 0.2 seconds of endorphins from posting a comment or seeing something funny, they get utility out of the other things.
Yeah.
AI is just a tax on everybody that doesn't produce anything else, really. And if it does, it's on those same platform. So your argument for like, hey, let's shut down everything. I get where you're going with this. But people will argue, well, some people can argue back saying, hey, I like Facebook because I can see my nieces in, in Australia, and I can communicate with them via the platform that uses that data center. For AI, it's running large language models for a company that, bought the data centers, is using it, reaping in all the benefits that I, pay for things that I don't necessarily use. I don't, helping me communicate with my niece in Australia, AI doesn't do. For watching a video that's like, hey, here's, a developer in the morning and here's a developer at night. And it's a hilarious video. It's a 2 minute long video where someone actually creatively made something and it or expressing a sentiment that I agree with. I'm a developer who works all day, works all night. That is funny to me. I got a chuckle out of that. I will pay for that. But I'm not going to pay for AI to try and then recreate that same video and give him six fingers and it wasn't nearly as funny. So I think that's where people will start to draw the line, at least for AI. And again,
Yeah, I agree.
I also agree with you too, though, that if we're going to draw that line, maybe we do. Maybe we do say, hey, you don't necessarily, unless you can figure out a way to optimize these current data centers that you have, this current land that you have, you don't get to do more Facebook. You don't get to do more Snapchat. You don't get to expand TikTok. You
And
optimize what you currently have. And when you can prove that, then maybe we'll approve expanded low leases for land elsewhere.
that's the reason I made actually, the big reason in the back of my mind why I made the comment, not to necessarily trash Facebook and say, let's close it down or any
I
of
mean,
the
I'm
others.
always down for trashing Facebook.
I don't
I'll
disagree
do it
with that,
what?
but, um, I wanted people to understand where these I'm gonna call it what it is, where these habits that people have, good or bad, is up for debate, that Facebook doesn't come out of thin air, TikTok doesn't come out of thin air, YouTube doesn't come out of thin air. So, I make that comment, and I usually get blasted on both sides, and I stand in and take it because, you know, people are like, "Well, my business uses Facebook." Yes, Well, then you should be paying something for that.
Agreed. Agreed.
And people have gotten under the, adage that everything I do on my phone should be free. You know, my dancing on TikTok to the song that everybody's dancing to, I should be able to do that. You're not paying for it, so no, you shouldn't. Should you be able to do that?
Well, here's another argument. If I'm going to pay for it, give me back my data. Give me back my
I
privacy.
I agree. I
Because you
agree.
told me we had an exchange where I said, okay, it's okay to harvest my data and my privacy in order to sell me ads because you make money on the ads.
Right?
Take the ads away, give me back my data and my privacy, and maybe I'll pay an extra dollar or two. Again, I'm not saying everyone will do that. I think the exchange was mutual. Everyone realized I don't have the money to support the data centers to run Facebook 24/7. So if you're telling me that I don't have to pay, but I will give up a bit of my information so that you can sell it to advertisers, let the advertisers pay for all of the data centers. We can work something out. That works for me as well because I'm just someone who works at Walmart. Don't I make 35 to $45,000 a year. I have kids I need to pay for, but I do love the occasional when I'm sitting at home scrolling through and laughing at stuff. That is again, I totally agree with that deal. But if you're telling me that I'm gonna have to start paying for it,
I want my data. Yes. Yes.
I want that trade back. Nevertheless, if people want to continue arguing with you about this, where can they find you and argue?
Yes, I will take this argument on 24/7, 365 because I'm a very opinionated person. I don't get involved in a lot of things that a lot of people do, but stuff like this I get opinionated about. David PAJ 1978. Scoot over to Blue Sky. Find me. We can DM. As long as you keep it clean and constructive, I'll keep it clean and constructive no matter what. We can have a good discussion. You can find me, David PAJ, on Twitch. I'm always on there streaming. Let's not talk about data centers necessarily while I'm streaming. I'm usually cursing a slight bit at Call of Duty and kill ratios and all that good stuff. So let me have my fun. But if you want to find me and have this discussion, David PAJ 1978 over on the Blue Sky. Now, my friend, where are you if people would like to come have this
I am
conversation with you?
here. Happy Hope, just as it sounds, at Blue Sky dot social. I'm at Cream Randerson still on Threads, which again, I promise that I changed that. So I'll get around to it this weekend and make it all uniform. That's easier
I'll
across the board.
remind him, folks. I'll remind
Thank
him.
you. And that's where I'll be at playing Hades 2 because it's super fun. Speaking of which, we don't want to skip out on our free play days, right?
No, 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 no. People like, what we've been talking about people paying for things. Let's, at
Let's
least
give
tell them
something to pay
how,
for, right?
yeah, let's give them something to pay for, at least something temporarily free. So this week, free play days, we have 4 titles. See what we have here. We have, I'm going to try to say this correctly. Subnautica is Thursday, April 9th, which was yesterday, through Sunday, April 12th. We've got Project Motor Racing and One Piece Pirate Warriors are free for all Xbox members to try during free play days. We have Graveyard Keeper is free for all Xbox users, and this one lasts until April 13th at 10 a.m. Pacific. Just to give you guys some rough idea here, the Subnautica is a 5-star game, so I may be trying this one out. You explore as an alien in an underwater world filled with wonder and danger in Subnautica, free play days. After crash landing on the ocean planet, you'll collect resources, craft equipment, and build underwater bases. Kind of sounds like a Sim City underwater, maybe. I guess we'll have to try that out.
Could be.
See. It's on sale if you're enjoying the game. Again, it's a 5-star game, so it might be worth trying out. From $29.99 to $14.99, we have free play days for all. There's One Piece Pirate Warriors 4. That one is also a 5-star game. Boy, Microsoft is bringing it this week. $39.99 down to $9.99 for free play days. So you got 2 very strong discounts here, one for $14.99 and one for $9.99. And Project Motor Racing. I'm a race fan. I haven't tried this one. I didn't know this one existed, so I know what I'll be trying. This one is a 4 out of 5 star game, and I'll tell you, folks, it's hard to get a 4 out of 5 star game out of a racing game, and it is $69.99 on sale for $38.49. And last but not least, the Graveyard Keeper is a medieval cemetery management. So this will be interesting here. Build and manage your own graveyard while finding shortcuts to cut costs. So in one game this week, you get to build a graveyard. In another game this week, you're building a underwater city. Kind of see a trend here. Graveyard Keeper is also a 4 out of 5 star game, and it is $19.99. Now we go through this every week, and until Microsoft does something different, we're gonna continue to go through it because I continue to be asked. You get to your free play titles by going to Xbox.com, or like normal people, you're on your console when you want to access these. You have to go to your account, go down to your membership, slide down to Game Pass, and there you will see free play days. I will make my plea one more time. Free play days belongs in the store and probably on the main screen starting every Thursday, lasting through every Sunday. Just my 2 cents. I like this Subnautica game. I'm going to try this one out. I wanna know what this is about. I'm gonna try this one out. I'm gonna try the, motor race route. Which one are you trying, my friend? When you're taking a break from
One Piece.
Hades.
Yeah, I was gonna say Subnautica looks fun. One Piece, just because I'm a fan of the anime, so I gotta at least try that out. So those would be the two. Again, if I can squeeze it in, because Hades 2 has been taking over my life. I've been playing it. I was texting my buddy the other night that once it was released this week, I'm like, hey, that's where I'm gonna be at. I got another Reddit for next week about cross saves and cross platform play, but that's for
Uh-oh.
next week. Yeah, Microsoft, you got some explaining to do. But other than that, we want you guys to go out and enjoy your weekend. If you're not playing games, maybe you're not a gamer, go outside, enjoy whatever it is. Maybe you're like barbecuing, maybe you like playing sports or swimming or doing any of those activities. Maybe if you're an indoor person, maybe like reading, cooking, listening to music, whatever it is, please enjoy it. And we want to thank you for joining us for another week of news. Hopefully, Microsoft will have something more to talk about next week. If you enjoyed what you heard this week, give it a thumbs up on any platform you're listening to or watching. Thank you.
Have a good weekend, everybody. Thanks.